Prime Minister Narendra Modi had let it be known that he believes in a policy of neighborhood first. And many people thought this was a radical departure from the past. But it was no radical departure. It was really continuation of the same policies that India had followed up to now. If anything, it tried to take forward the Gujarat doctrine, which said that India, being the largest country in South Asia, must not look for reciprocity each time it takes an initiative, that India should be the big brother in the region. That was the policy Prime Minister Modi wanted to take forward. And he sent the first signal of this during his inauguration, when his swearing in took place, and he invited all the heads of governments in 2014. However, a year later, the picture doesn't look so rosy. An impression has gone around that this policy hasn't really worked. However, having said that, let me also say that India's relationship with Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Maldives, Bangladesh have been on a fairly even keel during 2015, and the relationships have not deteriorated. Well, India's biggest foreign policy failure in this year was in the neighborhood. I would say India's Nepal policy has been a spectacular failure. India had in Nepal a close friend and all-weather friend. India helped the Maoists come into the democratic process. India encouraged Nepal to write its new constitution. But somehow during this year we took the eye off the ball, and then Nepal adopted a constitution which India suddenly found was not inclusive. The Indian Foreign Secretary flew into Nepal, asked them to change the constitution, but it was too late by then. So Nepal adopted a constitution which marginalizes a huge chunk of its own population, the people of the Tarai, the Madhesis. And the moment the Madhesis realized that they'd been cheated out of adequate political representation, they started a blockade. All the trade and transit routes from India to Nepal were completely closed, and agitation began on 23rd September this year. That agitation continues. As a result of that agitation, what is happening is that there's a deepening of a divide between the hill people of Nepal and the people of the plains, the Madhesis. In the hills, for example, in Kathmandu, people are cooking on wood stoves. They're walking to office. Schools are shut. Hospitals have a shortage of fuel. Public transport is in complete disarray because there is no diesel, no petrol. There's no cooking gas, as I said earlier. The net result is that the anti-India sentiment is growing in Nepal. So from being an all-weather friend of Nepal, we've converted Nepal into a country that is deeply suspicious of India. These were the people who hailed Prime Minister Modi when he went to Pashupatinath, when he addressed their parliament, when he attended the SAARC summit. And now they're burning the effigies of the Indian Prime Minister. This has never happened in the history of independent India. I think this has been our biggest failure this year. Well, it's one of our most tricky relationships and equally a very important relationship because Pakistan has been a difficult neighbor. India's Pakistan policy under Prime Minister Modi has been one of flip-flop. He gives no public explanations of why suddenly he raises the temperature against Pakistan and why suddenly then the temperature comes down. He surprised everybody by stopping over in Lahore en route to Delhi from Kabul and said that he was there for Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's birthday, bearing gifts for his family and for him, and the two prime ministers were walking hand in hand, clasping each other's hands. Now the question is, there was a time when Prime Minister Modi said that terrorism above all was the big issue with Pakistan and that India needed to discuss terrorism first, and people thought, fair enough, that's a reasonable statement. He also said that Pakistanis, when they come here for dialogue, will not engage with the all-party Hurriyat conference, the separatist Kashmiri leaders, because there is no third party to this dialogue. Now suddenly, having taken those hard positions, everything's dissipated and we are willing to discuss everything under a comprehensive dialogue, which is what we should do. We should discuss everything with Pakistan, but there should be some public explanation of why we are doing what we are doing. I think the reason Prime Minister Modi has suddenly changed his policy is, one, because of international pressure, and two, because he wants to go to the SAARC summit, the 14th SAARC summit, which will be held in Islamabad in July 2016, and he wants it to be a grand success. My point is that the relationship with Pakistan is so important that it should not be left to the whims and fancies of individual political leaders who breathe fire one day and next day walk around as if they were long-lost buddies. This relationship has to be sustained on a continuous basis. It has to be process-based, and individual personalities must be taken out of it. Only then will we understand what Pakistan's interests are, and Pakistan will understand what India's interests are, and that's the only way to improve this relationship and sort out all outstanding issues with Pakistan. I think it was a remarkably good year for India-Bangladesh relations. This was the year the land boundary agreement was ratified and operationalized. As a result of this agreement, 162 enclaves were exchanged. 111 of them were Indian enclaves in Bangladeshi territory, and 51 Bangladeshi enclaves were there on the Indian side. As a result of this exchange and rationalization of the boundaries, about 50,000 people suddenly got citizenship of either India or Bangladesh, and they were up to now in a limbo with no access to public services, not being able to make demands on their governments because they were surrounded by the land of another country. When Prime Minister Modi went to Bangladesh this year, he extended a credit line of $2 billion for Bangladesh. He also announced $5 million investment, and 22 agreements were signed between the two countries to increase energy cooperation, enhance infrastructure and connectivity between the two. So this was a great achievement. The Teesta Accord, water sharing agreement on the Teesta, still needs to be completed, and hopefully that will also be completed. This was also the year when Ulfa fugitive Anup Chetia was handed over by Bangladesh to India, again underlining the extent and depth of India's security cooperation with Bangladesh. Bangladesh, however, is suffering from internal strife, the internal problems. The government that is elected has squeeze the public space for the opposition. Opposition leaders are either in jail or not able to protest. And this public space is being occupied by jihadi groups who are to the right of even the Jamaat-e-Islami. These are the groups who are silencing the voices of bloggers and secular intellectuals by murdering them. Now you might say that this is an internal problem of Bangladesh. However, growth of jihadi fundamentalism in Bangladesh can affect India also, and we've seen this, how easily these people can cross the border in the case of the Burdwan blasts. Well, let's take the case of Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, Pakistan is once again occupying center stage in trying to broker peace between Kabul and the Taliban. President Ashraf Ghani of Afghanistan is being encouraged by the United States and China to engage Pakistan so that he can talk to the Taliban. But the Afghan leadership itself is deeply divided over engaging the Taliban or using Pakistan to facilitate any talks with Taliban. They believe that Pakistan is the source of all their woes and that it is part of the problem and not part of the solution. India, however, continues to enjoy a tremendous amount of public support because of its development activities, because of its educational activities, and that goodwill continues. Now India has also started engaging Afghanistan in defense matters. Up to now, we used to supply them only trucks and jeeps and so on and so forth, but now India is also supplying them helicopters. In Sri Lanka, after the defeat of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, the new government that is led by President Maithripala Sirisena and Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister is much more friendly towards India than the previous regime. India no longer has to worry about Chinese influence increasing in the island nation or its interests not being protected, and the relationship is much more balanced today than it has been in the last 5 to 10 years. In Maldives, internally the country is on a slippery slope. A vice president is being tried for trying to murder the president. A former president is serving a 13-year jail sentence on terrorism charges. Supreme Court judges have been sacked and a defense minister has been sacked. However, these developments have not led to any major deterioration of relationship with India. Only thing that has happened is that a veiled warning was issued that foreign countries must not interfere in the internal matters of Maldives. And what is significant is that this statement from the Maldivian President's office came during the visit of the Indian Foreign Minister.